Good morning, everybody. This is Ariel at Mopar ICU. Today I'm going to be making a video on rebuilding a Chrysler A833 4-speed transmission. But I wanted to show my wiper motor and my headlight motor. I just got back from Topper McGinnis. Very good work. He restores these. As you can see, they are in better than new condition. I highly recommend him if you need them rebuilt, whether it's just to use on a driving car or you're doing a full restoration. He does very quality work. I do have a little dust on them right now, so don't be fooled. That's from sitting in the garage, but they are beautiful. I'm very happy with the work. So here we have an A833 4-speed. This hit transmission came out of my 72 Charger. I had another 4-speed already rebuilt that I threw in it temporarily. As you can see, there's a lot of play in this shaft. It was making a lot of noise. I'm going to guess and say that the needle bearings between the two main shafts is probably shot. So I'm going to go through it, get it rebuilt in the springtime, put it back in the car. I've already loosened some of the bolts here and make it easier on me. So all I got to do is take them out. You got to remove these back bolts first. Get the tail shaft off. I'm working out of my basement, if you can't tell. I got two garages, but anybody who's into these cars knows, before you know it, they're both full. Seems like you just keep gathering more and more parts. Amazingly, when you take a car apart, it seems to take up 10 times the space it did when it was together. I'm going to remove the speedometer gear. Being a little stubborn today. not going to reuse this because I don't particularly like this style of housing. I don't believe it's even original to the transmission. Now it's starting to move. Alright, I got the gear out. Can't really see what number it is, but I'm not going to use this one anyway. I don't particularly like this style. I have an extra housing I'll use when I put it back together. Okay, now it's broke free. We're going to have to take the cover off so that we can get the shifter forks out of the way. But it's ready to come out at this point. I'm pretty sure at some point somebody had this transmission apart. So I can see a lot of silicone up here around the front. What all they did to it, hard telling. Very heavy. not easy for me to lift as an individual. I'm going to do my best here. I can see this transmission definitely has trouble because everything's already fallen apart and it shouldn't just come apart like that. Try and get this thing leveled out. Oh no, the gears don't look horrible. Rolling this, I can tell you the bearing feels very bad. I don't know if you can hear that, but it does not sound good at all. Some of the parts fell down in here, synchronizer. Worry about that later. So I need to pull the front bearing retainer out of here. So the secondary set of gears has a shaft right here with a keyway on the back that keeps it aligned and pushing all the way through. We need to tap that out. May have to go to the garage and get a punch, or maybe it'll move. It's going. Don't want to spill my coffee over here. There's all the needle bearings. Not to be surprised. Normally, I would have went and got a punch to do all that, but being as I'm in my basement, I don't want to walk all the way out to the garage. These are the needle bearings that shaft rides on. We'll get into more of that when we put it back together, but That's probably the biggest pain in the butt about putting this transmission back together. But if you use the proper equipment, it's not, it can be easier. They recommend using high-tack grease. And being I work in a machine shop, I'm going to see if I can't make a piece of high-speed steel slightly smaller than the shaft, so I can assemble it with it to hold the bearings in place. There we go. That's the shaft. I dropped the keyway that goes right in here. It's over here somewhere. There's also another shaft that your reverse gear rides on. Let's see if I can't get that out before I take the other set of gears out. Sometimes it can be a pain. There's the keyway piece. Considering it's bent, I would say yes, at some time somebody must have took this apart. It probably wasn't lined up with the cutout for it, so it damaged it. Here that comes. Here's the back, the reverse shaft. Same thing, it has a keyway on it. This is the reverse gear. Just looking at the bushing. It's got a little wear, but it don't look horrible. I mean, how often does the reverse gear actually get used? This is the keyway for the shift the rear gear. It goes in this slot, so when you move the fork, it pushes it back and forth. This is the shift fork for it. Push it out. So that's the reverse shift fork. Oh. The only thing about it is this stuff is heavy. I mean, I guess if you're a big, strong man, it's not too bad, but I don't happen to be a big, strong man. I'm just a woman who loves Mopars. And here's the front part of the main shaft. It looks all right, but obviously it's going to have to be mic'd to see how much wear is on it. If those needle bearings are too sloppy, that shaft will have to be replaced. And that's that. You still have to take the reverse backup light switch out. We have to take the the nut that holds the ball bearing in place for the reverse shifter, which fell down in here. Here's that. That rides along these humps, and that's when it clicks, that's what you're feeling. Should be able to get the secondary gear shaft out of here now. There's that. These needle bearings, this is what it rides on. There's 2 sets on each end with a shaft in the middle that keeps them on the ends. There's the thrush bushing that goes at the one end of it. It's got a little wear. It's not horrible. I've seen worse. There's the thrush bushing that goes on the other end. Again, it's not horrible. I've seen worse. I got a little bit of grease in here. I got a 5-gallon bucket over here. I had most of the transmission oil drained out, but there's still some in it. I don't want that all over my carpet here I'm working on. I don't want it all over my basement floor, so I'm just going to sit this in the bucket and let it drain out. Looks like I already did make some of a mess. There's the other keyway for the secondary shaft. Just throw that down in the bucket. Get another rag. So here's the tail shaft. To get this out, there's a C-clip in here, expansion clip. Sometimes they can be a real pain unless you got the right tool for it. I already got this one started. Or so I think, anyway. We need to take the back seal off. Just going to try and get under the lip, pry bar, and knock it out. There it goes. Yeehaw. And the seal's out. Now we want to tap the shaft out. I should have my rubber mallet, but I don't have it handy. All right, so we got the tail shaft separated from the gear shaft. Just gonna sit that there. Move the tail shaft out of the way. It'll have to be cleaned up. get this thing out of the way. And there we have it. It's the main shaft. It's our synchronizer. Go together like that. There's your secondary shaft, and that's how they work. Reverse sits out here. I looked at the synchronizers. I'm looking at the gears. They look fine. I think the only thing wrong, and I know you can't hear that, was this back bearing. Very, very rough. I have a new rebuild kit, and the second part of my video will be cleaning up the housing, painting it, and reassembling it. There you go. All in all, not too bad. Can be a pain in the butt sometimes if you don't have the right tools or the patience, which on occasion I lose mine, but you didn't get to hear that part because I paused the video. And I'll see you in the second half. So a few things I picked up since I made the first half of this video. So you're going to need high-tack grease to hold the needle bearings in place. I got a new distributor drive gear based off my tire size. I got a shaft to hold the needle bearings in the secondary shaft. And I got a rebuild kit from a place called Brewers. You can get nearly anything you need for a 4-speed transmission there. It comes with everything you need to rebuild the transmission, all the bushings, bearings, gaskets, seals. The next phase, I also got the reverse backup switch, and I found a different housing for the distributor drive gear because I didn't want to use the style that came out of this transmission. I prefer this style here. So the next thing we have to do is we got to get these old bearings off. I have a press out in the garage, and the first thing you got to do is take these C-clips out. One here as well. Sometimes they can be a pain to get out, and then you have to press those bearings off of there. Which we're going to have to move out to the garage to do that where my press is at. So, to press this bearing off, you're going to need one of these here bearing presses. Not sure what the official name of it is. Then you're going to need a press like this. The piece for the press wasn't wide enough to fit the gears between, so I had to rig it with some jack stands, but it'll work. I guess in the future I'll probably have to get a bigger press if I'm going to rebuild too many of these. And we just give it pressure until the bearing comes off. It's coming little by little. It doesn't take much, but it's more than you're going to do by hand. We'll have to put the new bearing on the same way. Pressure on it. There it goes. I didn't want it to drop like that, but doing shit by yourself, it's kind of hard. So on this one, I was able to use the crossbar for the press, but I just had to shim this up a little bit. I'm going to do the same process here. The shaft's moving. And that's that. Bearing is off. We're ready to clean these up and put the new bearings on. I'll probably clean this rust off of here first, off the primary shaft here. Outside of that, it's ready to go back together. So I'm all set up to press this new bearing on here. You're gonna have to hold the gear pack up and then in place while you press it. You want to make sure this is kind of straight. It looks like it's kind of trying to press it crooked right now. You definitely want this groove to be towards the gears. That's the stop ring. That's for the C-clip that goes in the tail shaft. Check periodically, make sure it's going on well. Now she's going. you'll be able to tell when you're all the way down because you won't have all this slop. Now there's no slop. So we want to check it right now, make sure that we're past our groove for the C-clip so we can get that in. It's kind of heavy. Looks like we gotta go a tiny bit more. Down now. And that's pressing the bearings on. The front bearing I'm not going to be able to do. Got the wrong bearing for the front. You can clearly see that it's the bearing that I got was smaller than the one that was in there. I'm going to say I probably ordered the kit with the wrong front bearing. It's probably on me. I've never had a problem ordering from them before, from Brewers, so I'm going to assume I just ordered the wrong front bearing. I'm going to have to get that front bearing before I can go any further. I can, however, drive out the bushing out the tail shaft. I don't know if you can see this, but there's a notch right there, and that's where you want to drive with a chisel. You're better off with a dull chisel, because you're not trying to cut it, you're just trying to drive it out the tail shaft. And that's that. Bushing the out. I'm not going to press the new bushing at this time because I need to clean these housings up and paint them. And I will pick up on that after I have them painted. So here we are 2 days later. I got my new bearing in. It's proper size this time, and you know, I'm going to press it onto the front shaft, and then we'll be ready to reassemble the transmission. You want to make sure that the press is centered so that it presses the bearing down flat at about an angle. Also want to make sure this groove is away from the gears. That groove is so when you put this front shaft in, the C-ring that goes on there will stop it from going all the way in. There you go. It's not exactly how I planned it, but I guess it went on. Make sure it's all the way down, which it is. We're good. So I'm ready to press the new bushing into the tail shaft. Now I got it cleaned up and painted. When you press this in, you need to make sure this hole is lined up with that groove, because that's what allows oil to get into the bushing. Got a rubber mallet, and I got a bearing press. I'm just going to tap it into place. And that's what it should look like. Should be flush with the top here. when we put the seal in, we want to make sure this hole faces directly down and this slot faces directly up. We'll put a little bit of silicone on it. It helps it. So that's basically what it's going to look like. I put a thin stream of it on the inside too. So we're going to make sure the hole faces straight down, the slot up. I'm going to change out the size of my bearing driver. And I found what works perfect for this is a connecting rod, so that you can get a flat, straight drive on the seal. Just make sure it's all the way down. And that's all there is to it. Take a rag and wipe the excess sealant off the outside. And now the tail shaft is ready for reassembly. So, I've reinstalled the C-clips on the back of the bearings. Now it's time to put the tail shaft, gear assembly in the tail shaft. And it's just simply going to slide in here. I can find the hole in there. And then we're going to have to expand the C-clip so that this will slide in. Easier said than done. This probably isn't the best tool for this. Now that we have that in, we need to work on our secondary gear pack. Trying to scoot this back out of my way as best I can. So this shaft goes in the center of this gear pack. I've purchased a tool to help do this because this helps hold the bearings, the needle bearings in place. And the needle bearings, which I have here, I also have high-tack grease, which aids tremendously in helping to hold these bearings in here. So you're going to want to coat the inside of this with it liberally. This is high-tack grease, so it helps hold the bearings, needle bearings in here. What you're going to want to do is try and push this sleeve as far up as you can get it. Probably need some more grease. And start lining these bearings around in a circle. This can be quite tedious. Just need to have patience in this process. My first time doing this, I had a real tough time of it. Of course, I didn't have the high-tech grease. Now you can see they're all in there. And the shaft is intended to help hold them. You're going to want to put a washer on top of here now. You want to put some grease on it, get it nice and lubed. Push it down till it touches the bearings. And we're going to put another set of bearings in here. Don't be afraid to put a little extra grease because it helps hold these things from falling over. And that's one side. You can leave that go down a little bit. And then you're going to install the second washer on here. And that's one side. Now we repeat that same process for the other side. You're going to want to hold this bearing in there so it doesn't fall out. This washer, I mean. And we're going to repeat that same process for this side. So I'm ready to assemble this. I've set the secondary counter shaft in there with the shaft that's used to assemble it. It's just short of each end, so it still moves. Got to make sure you put your bushing ends in. They only go one way. There's a slot right here. And in here, there's another slot. This slides in. So those are all in there now. You can see the secondary shaft down in there. I don't want to put the main shaft in through it. I got it ready because I need enough room to slide this in. This gear will not get past the other gear if you have that shaft in without rubbing against it and possibly doing damage. My main shaft here, I've moved the gear selector up and put a zip tie on here. It has to be up in order to clear this gear in here. When it goes into the front shaft. I put the zip tie here because there's springs under there with clips that keep this snap forward or snap back. If they pop out, you're going to have a lot of fun with that. That's why I put the zip tie on there. You do not want those to pop out. So I'm going to start to assemble this. Start by, well, we got to put the retaining ring on my front gear. It's not hard. It just keeps it going from too far. So you can see, you probably can't see it, but trust me when I tell you, it's rubbing a little bit. Had I put that shaft all the way in, it would really be hitting hard. Just want to tap on here and try and hold the secondary gear pack back a little bit. I mean, just tap. Don't hit hard. You don't want to damage the bearing. You only want to hit the outside part of the race. There you go. It's in. It's up against the retainer ring. I've already got a gasket sitting on here. I tacked on with silicone. So now I'm going to pick up this gear pack. And I've already put the pins in the front shaft as well. Probably can't see it, but there's pins inside there just like in the secondary shaft that go around in a circle. You gotta make sure they don't fall out just like with the counter shaft. Can't put that in yet. Yeah, I gotta apologize. I'm getting ahead of myself. We've got to put the shaft in first. Now you want to make sure that when you put it in, your alignment dial lines up with the space on the casing. you're able to spin it once it gets in there, but it's not as easy, so you want to make sure you're close, because it is hard to spin it. I already got a little grease on it. Start it in there. I'm just going to tap it. You have to make sure that everything's in alignment as far as your bushing in there. You don't want to pinch it. You have to make sure that the second side over here is lined up, or likewise, the pin ain't going to go through. You can kind of hold it with your finger. And it's pretty close. You just got to get over the lip. And make sure nothing's binding. It's not. Being a little stubborn. It's going in, but it's not giving me a good time. There we go. So you can push it by hand now that you got past the lip. Again, you want to make sure this dowel is aligned. If you need to spin it, you can kind of turn it with pliers. So I turned it a little bit, see if it lines up better now. There we go. You want to make sure it's slightly below the surface so that it doesn't interfere with your other casing. So now I've already put a new O-ring on here and lubed it up for the reverse gear. I'm going to pop that up in here. I'm going to start my pin, and I've already lubed it up for my reverse shaft. Slot goes towards the back. I didn't change the bushing in it because it didn't look bad. I mean, let's face it, how much wear do you get on a reverse gear? So what you got to do, this pin goes in that slot and then goes through the selector. You got to make sure that it's in place when you put this in here. The same thing, you gotta make sure the dowel's lined up. And then you tap it into place. Make sure the dowel goes into its seat. And that's it. You also probably want to put the ball bearing and tension spring in. And this can be tricky, but you got to hold this in here and screw it in, and it goes against the selector shaft here. And that's what stops it in its particular place. It's hard to hold the ball bearing, but it can be done. Make sure it seats in the spring. I believe I got it. I'm just going to make it hand tight right now. You'll know if it's in because it'll pop. See, pops from one selecting space to the next. So we're good on that. I'll leave it forward for now. I'll move some of my stuff out of the way. Now we're ready to put the tail shaft in. So I'm putting it in here. You can see that the front selector, if you had it all the way back, it's not going to clear this gear and get this pin into its particular place. And that's why I moved it forward. And I put this zip tie on here to make sure the springs don't pop out. Because if they pop out, guess what? You're going to pull it all out and start all over putting them in place again. And that's no fun. Been there, did that. Now you can see I cleared that gear shaft. And now I can move this over to get the pin aligned with where the dowels are. And had this been back, it would not have cleared that gear. Move the reverse back, because if it's forward, it's going to be in the way of this gear. I mean, that's the gear it engages, but you want it backwards out of the way. That way you can move this over without any problems to get your alignment right. Maybe a little bit forward. This can be tricky sometimes. This thing is pretty heavy too. It's no easy task. I'm not the strongest person in the world. Jeez, always. Just gonna not get it to go in right now. Whew. There we go. She popped right in place. Sometimes it's tricky. Whew. Because you're trying to get these gears in their perspective place, and they've got to line up with the teeth. So now you can see it popped in. This went all the way forward. I'm going to start a few bolts back here, hold it in place. You can see the front shaft started moving a little bit. Just want to tap it back where it goes gently, so don't push the back. Now, let me get some bolts started back here. Snug a couple of them up. You could use a torque wrench if you want to torque these to spec. I'm just doing it by hand for right now. I can go back and torque them later. My main thing is the case is together and it ain't going anywhere. I can move my gear selector back and see about getting this zip tie off of here. Got it. We can just discard that. We don't need it. It did its job. Kept the gear selector where it needed to be. I'm going to pause the video for a minute while I catch my breath. Now I'll be back. And I'm back. So, I got my retainer gasket. This dimple here is going to go towards this hole right here. That allows any oil that comes through here to drain back in, and vice versa. Drain out, drain in. It keeps the bearing well lubed. I've already driven my seal in. Use a bearing press. You want to make sure the gasket goes on, so the dimple in the gasket is aligned with that dimple in the casing. Now I already put a little bit of lube on my seal. Now we're going to push it on there. Start a bolt and get this tightened down. That'll hold your front bearing in its place. Again, I'm just going to torque these by hand. It's probably not a bad idea to go back later and torque them to the proper specifications. Right now, I'm just getting the transmission together. Okay. We can put our gear selectors in. Hopefully you remember which one went where. I do in this case. I'll need to move my reverse selector forward to get them out of my way. So now we got our gear selectors. We're going to want to get these old seals off here and put the new ones on. Sometimes it can be a trick to get them out of here. And I got it. Yeah, clean this up real good. Wipe all the garbage out of there. And we're going to want to put our new seal in here. Careful you don't tear the seal. They can be a pain in the butt sometimes because they're meant to be tight. If you use a screwdriver like me, just be careful you don't tear it. And that one's in. I'll set it back over here with my cover. And I'm going to grab the second one and do the same thing, get the old seal out. And I'm going to put the new seal in. If I don't drop it, right? And there we go. So now over here, I'm going to try and move this transmission back, but oh gosh, is it heavy. I got my case. And I'm going to put these back through the case, at least the front one. I already put a little bit of gook on there, on the seal. You're going to want to flip it over. And somewhere over here there's another ball bearing. Oh, it's still in there. That's where it is. You're going to want to slide this through here. The key is to keep the ball bearing in there. We'll take our other shaft and we're going to slide it through. Start it through. And then we're going to try to put this ball bearing in there. And this can be tricky. Because you got to compress that in there and push this down like so. And that's how that goes. Okay, so I got them in the center slot, which is the neutral position. Just to show you, let me sit this down. You want to make sure your gears are in the neutral position. So you can see the synchronizer on each side. So I know it's hard to see. Then they're centered. That's where you want them. You have to bring your selectors up. Try and get them to put something under the transmission to keep it up a little bit so it's more flat. But try and keep them sitting upright. It's not an easy task either. And we're going to line the pins like so. Hopefully they go right on like so, and there you go. But I didn't put the gasket on yet. Gasket. There's no need to take it all the way off. We should be able to just lift it up a hair and fit it under here, I think. Do this without tearing it, that is. And that I did. I got it under there. The thing is, now we got to get it lined up. It'd been easier if I put it on there first, but sometimes I can be a little slow. Ah, heck. Just take it back off, and I knew that was going to happen. The bearing popped out of here. Exactly what I didn't want to do. So while I fished that out, I'm going to pause this video. Alright, I fished that ball bearing out, got it back in its place. I'm going to use my head this time, set the gasket on there first. The front one will usually stay up, it's the back one that wants to fall. So that one you're going to have to hold while you try and get it lined up at the hole in here. I want you don't pinch your fingers. A little bit of wiggling you might have to do. And there we go. So I have all my case bolts. One of them has a clip meant to hold the reverse wire. That one goes up here. And these bolts, you want to make sure you have the original bolts because they have a lip that keeps this case centered where it needs to be. I just want to put a couple of these in. For now, just kind of take them down until they seat. Before I bolt all of this up, I want to take my lever and make sure this pops back and forth in the gear. And it does. Hallelujah. And what about reverse? Sometimes you might have to spin it. I'm not in gear, so I have to spin the back. This one don't exactly fit on there right. I think it's the right one for the reverse. There we go. If I can get it to stay. Well, put a nut on there. The thing keeps falling off. Now I know this ain't the way the lever goes. I'm just putting it on here for now. So I can try and shift this thing in and out of reverse. Isn't that thing going? See, this is why I said don't hold it all the way down yet. So I gotta figure this out. I'm gonna pause the video for now. So I found my mistake. So you want the reverse gear to be all the way forward because it has to clear this lip. If you don't do that, well, you're going to have problems like I did. Third time's a charm, right? Well, almost didn't put my gasket back on again. How do you like that? Alright, now let's try this again. Again, I just want to snug a couple of these up, hold the case in place. like we're having problems again here, right? There we go. So what that slot in there is for is to make sure when you're in reverse, you're not going to move this other gear. Now that we know it's going to go in reverse, we can start putting some of these other bolts in. It's a couple longer ones. They're going to go in this higher spot on the case. There's the shorter ones. Go on the thinner part of the case. Again, I'm just going to torque these by hand now. Keep the case nice and snug. Going back and torquing them to proper specifications is a very good idea. But I think everybody knows how to do that, so right now I'm just tightening these up. Alright, so I'm going to pause the video while I clean up a little bit here, and then we'll carry on with putting the reverse backup switch in and my speedometer here. And I'm back. So here's the reverse speedometer gear, or reverse switch. Not speedometer gear, what am I thinking? Now there's a paper gasket that goes on this. You want to make sure you get that on. And this goes here. I'm just going to put it in there snugly for now because I don't have the deep well socket here in my basement. It's out in the garage. We can snug that up later. I think I had said before, I didn't care much for the type of gear that was in there. There's two different kinds, but that wasn't the kind I wanted to use. So this is the gear I chose to use. You know, I bought it from Brewers. I have everything you'd want to need for 4-speed cars. Even came with the seals for the housing. So this black seal goes down in here I'm going to have to take this piece out and drive that out. The red seal goes around here, and then you have a clip. Oop, wrong direction. Which I don't believe we need the clip for this one. But I'm going to pause the video while I go drive this old seal out and put the new one in. Alright, I got the new seal in there. And that clip actually holds that seal in. But let's face it, how often does anybody rebuild one of these things? You know, sometimes you forget how it goes. Usually people just grab one out of another transmission and throw it in. So I lube that up, the shaft. It goes up in here like this. Pull it back out for now. So on this housing, and I have a 41 gear because I know what my tires are and I know what my rear end gear is going to be. So you're going to have selectors on here, and here's 39 to 45. So you're going to want that notch pointing at this nub right here when you put this in. Just like that. Then this tab is going to go into 2 slots there. And we're going to tighten this down, and that's going to hold the gear selector in its spot. I'm going to tighten that down. And that's how that goes. I have new selectors for it I purchased. Somewhere around here. Here they are. Got the new nuts, locking nuts that come with it. I got the washers and the clips for the shifter mechanism, which we'll do that at another time. I'll actually install these later. I'm going to pause the video for now. Got a few things to do. So the last thing I got to do is install my shift levers. Got brand new shift levers for this. With the nuts. This is an old lever. I don't want to use it. I just put it on there to check the function of the reverse. So the straight, longer one always goes to the front. The stepped one goes to the back. You want the bevel to face outward, because your shift mechanism has to go on from the back side. And then the reverse. You see, these fit on nice and tight. That's why it's nice to get new ones, so there's no slop in your shift mechanism. And there you have it. Rebuilt 4-speed transmission. Now the drain plug is on the other side. I'll fill this up once I get it out in the garage. I'm not personally going to pick it up and put it out there. I'll have my kid do that. He's a lot younger than me, a lot stronger than me. But what you'd want to do when you fill it is have it sitting level. If it's not in the car, you're going to want to have a spare transmission fitting for the back of the transmission. But you're going to want to pull this plug out. You're going to want the transmission to be level. And then you're going to fill it till it just starts to drain out of that plug. And that's how much fluid it will hold. Another video, I'll do the adjustment of the shifter. I can't do that now because it's on my car. I had a spare 4-speed that I put in the car with the shifter so I could still drive it. This is the one that actually goes to the car. And that's that.